Hello there, welcome to the Unique History Channel. Tonight, we'll be reading The Revolution in Russia by William Elroy Curtis, and it appeared in the National Geographic magazine from May 1907. In order to understand the significant chance of events in the revolution that is now going on in Russia, it is necessary to recall what you learned in your school days. That it has the largest population area of any nation and the population of 140 million souls, including 80 million peasants. The literate classes constitute at least three-fourths of the population, 112 millions who cannot read or write. During the last few years, there has been a very rapid improvement in this respect by reason of the establishment of village schools. But a wise man once said that a little learning is a dangerous thing, and his wisdom has been demonstrated in Russia. The introduction of a school system accounts for a remarkable spread of socialistic ideas among the working classes of that empire. Kipling once said, as long as a Russian music wore his shirt outside his trousers, he was a safe citizen. When he tucked it in, he became dangerous to the state. The truth of that quaint remark has been forcibly demonstrated within the last 18 months. The Russian workmen in the cities and factory towns, and the peasants in the fields, who constitute 4/5 of the vast population, have vague and fantastic ideas of government and the meaning of the word liberty. They will follow anyone who promises to improve their condition, and are merciless and vindictive toward every one they distrust. For that reason they are more dangerous and destructive than the corresponding class in France. The peasants' need of land. The peasants were formerly serfs, and slaves were emancipated by the grandfather of the present Tsar, who was known as Alexander the Good, and when they were given their freedom, the government applied the socialistic principle that the soil belongs to the men who till it, and each family was given an average of 6¼ acres of cultivated land, which was then sufficient to supply their wants. The increase of population has cut down this average to 3½ acres, which is not sufficient to support a family. According to experts, at least 7 acres is necessary to sustain an average family, so the peasant has only about half the land he needs. The remainder of the empire is held in vast estates belonging to the government, the crown, the monasteries, the grand dukes, the nobility, and the boyars or gentry, and only part is under cultivation. The peasants need the idle land, and they demand it. They have emphasized their demands with the torch and bludgeon during the last 18 months and have destroyed several $100 million worth of property, including some of the finest estates in the empire, under the leadership of demagogues who have aroused their passions and made them insane with drink. In his natural state, the Russian peasant is honest, stupid, superstitious, and stubborn, and when he is excited, he becomes a savage. He has no ideals. He has no comprehension of politics. He does not comprehend the word constitution, but he knows that he needs more land. There is not enough vodka in all the empire to quench his thirst, and his vision is limited to his own local interests. The greater part of the peasants' land is held in common, and the fields are all allotted by the village elders, who are elected by the heads of the families and exercise a tyrannical authority over the communities. No peasant can sell his land or borrow money upon it. He cannot leave his native place without the consent of elders. His condition of serfdom as gauge of a traveler was closely examined and usually seized in effort to prevent the dissemination of revolutionary literature. Nowadays, manuscripts, books, and pamphlets are passed without question. You can buy revolutionary music, photographs, and postcards on the streets at the newsstands. You can find all kinds of newspapers, including the most radical organs of the socialists, upon the files in the reading rooms of the hotels. You can find all newspapers, including the most radical organs of the socialists, upon the files in the reading rooms of hotels, and cartoonists are taking amazing liberties with public men and public questions in the comic papers. If such caricatures had been printed 2 years ago, both the artist and the publisher would have gone into a dungeon. Boys on the street are selling photographs of martyrs for liberty, Polish Jews who have thrown bombs and assassinated officials, revolutionists who have been killed by the police or executed for political offenses, and the leaders of the mutiny at Kronstadt, Hellingsford, and Stavropol. One of the most popular and profitable photos represents William Jennings Bryan sitting in the center of the reddest socialists and anarchists in Russia. It was taken on the steps of Taurai Palace during a session of the Duma and has done incredible harm because it has convinced many honest working men that Mr. Bryan and the people of the United States sympathize with the bomb throwers and anarchists. The mails are no longer interfered with. The censors have been discharged, and foreign newspapers correspond and can criticize the government as much as they like and send their dispatches all over the official telegram lines. Premier Stolpian is able and brave. Russia has been more tranquil in the last 3 months than for 3 years previous. The great strike that was arranged by the socialists as a protest against the dissolution of the Duma did not come off because the working men would not obey the instructions of the politicians. The uprising of the peasants, which was to occur after the crops had been gathered, was immediately postponed, and a few estates have been destroyed recently. No more massacres will be permitted because Mr. Stolypin knows how to prevent them and is determined to do so. There was no unfriendly demonstration toward the government on October 30th, the first anniversary of the manifesto which offered liberty to the people and promised many blessings that had not been bestowed. Robberies and murders in Poland have not been so frequent of late. Mr. Stolypin has introduced reforms during the last 3 months than was ever known in any previous administration. He has taken a sensible view of the situation. He recognizes that the people have been wronged and have grievances that should be redressed. He has tried to see both sides of the situation, and not so long ago declared the opinion that men were compelled to live on 1 herring and 3 potatoes a day cannot be expected to understand the benefits of an autocracy or the obligations of citizenship. He referred to the starving Jews, and while he did not feel at liberty to grant them the full rights enjoyed by other subjects without concurrence of the Duma, he was relieved them from the most severe restrictions under which they had been suffering. And now they can go about Russia with any ordinary passport. They may engage in any business, but are not allowed to buy land outside the Pale of Settlement. Jewish children are now admitted all schools and universities of Russia with one condition: that members of that race are now enjoying nearly all the liberties of the other races and religions. Expect there has been no change in passport regulations. Foreign Jews are still compelled to explain the object of their visit before they permitted to pass the boundary. Mr. Stolypin will undoubtedly remove that humiliation in due time. The vengeance of the Jews. Perhaps these reforms are the cause of the present tranquility, because the revolutionary leaders, nearly all of them, belong to the Jewish race, and the most effective revolutionary agent is the Jewish Bund, which has a headquarters at Bialystok, where the massacre occurred last June. The government has suffered more from that race than from all of its other subjects combined. Whether a desperate deed is committed, it was always done by a Jew, and there was one scarcely loyal members of that race in the entire empire. The great strike which paralyzed the empire and compelled the Tsar to grant a constitution in parliament was ordered and managed by a Jew named Kruleslev, president of the Working Man's Council, a young man of only 30 years old. He was sent to the penitentiary for life and had not been behind bars more than 3 weeks when he organized and conducted a successful strike of the prison employees. Maxim, who organized and conducted the revolution in the Baltic provinces, is a Jew of marvelous ability. Last fall, he came over here lecturing and collecting money to carry on some revolutionary campaign, but for some reason has vanished and nobody seems to know what has become of him. Gershunin, the most resourceful leader of the terrorists, was condemned to life imprisonment in the silver mines on the Mongolian frontier, has recently escaped in a water cask, and is supposedly to be in San Francisco. He is a Polish Jew, only 27 years old. I might memory over 100 other revolutionary leaders, and every single one of them would be Jewish. Whether you read of assassination or explosion of a bomb, you notice in the newspaper the dispatches of the man was a Jew. The most sensational and dramatic episode that has occurred since the mutinies was on October 27th, when in the very center of St. Petersburg, the entrance of a Kazan cathedral, 4 Jews held up a treasury weapon and captured $270,000. They passed the package to a woman who enslaved vanished, and no trace of them has ever been found. But they were all arrested and were promptly punished. On the 8th of November, a few Jewish revolutionaries entered a treasury car near Riga in Poland and got $850,000 and disappeared. Every deed of that kind is done by Jews, and the massacres that have shocked the universe and occurred frequently. The name pogrom was invented to describe them, were organized and managed by the expert police authorities, and the realization that for crimes committed by Jewish revolutionaries. Many reforms already instituted by Premier Stolypin. But Mr. Stolypin has evidently arranged a truce. He has crushed out the conspirators in the police department who organized and directed the pogroms, and has given Jews more liberty and more justice than any ever enjoyed before. He has appointed a commission to prepare a law placing them upon the same footing as Protestants, Roman Catholics, and members of other religious faiths. Mr. Stolypin is an able, honest, and grave man of broad horizon and liberal views and a high sense of justice. He has already done wonders. Every week some important reform is ordered, some tyrannical regulation revoked, some liberty conferred, some confession granted. He has emancipated the heretical sect of the Orthodox Greek Church known as Old Believers, who have been persecuted almost as cruelly as the Jews. They are now allowed to own property and build schools and publish books containing their religious doctrines, and they are allowed to marry without the sanction of the Orthodox Church. Their sons admitted into the military schools and are eligible for positions in the civil service. Stolypin has also removed the ban on which peasants from entering the civil service, which is one of the most striking departures from the traditional regulations of the autocratic regime. He has removed all distinctions concerning appointments under the state.